Apple to shift all American iPhone assembly from China to India. And I said this was going to happen. We were going to use India to make our products now. Forget China. Um, India is going to be our new ally when it comes to manufacturing and stuff like that. We don't have to use China. Why would we use China in the first place? Who's not an ally of us? They produce a lot of our products, a lot of our medicine and stuff like that. So if we decide to go to war with China, all they have to do is just cut us off when it comes to manufacturing. It makes absolutely no sense why you will work with your adversary like this. So we're gonna talk about it, but before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my X account, so follow me there as well. All right, let's get into this news. Now, this comes from Slate News, and they report that tech giant Apple is planning to move the assembly of all iPhones sold in America from China to India, according to reports. According to people familiar with the matter who spoke with the Financial Times, all American iPhones will be assembled in India by the end of next year. See, they should have been working on this a long time ago. The Financial Times reports that the major pivot is driven by the ongoing trade war between the US and China. Apple is aiming to source the entirety of its US iPhone supply from India as soon as next year. The move comes after Apple, the largest company in the world by market capitalization, has spent nearly 2 decades building up a world-class manufacturing operation in China. It also comes after Apple CEO Tim Cook reportedly signed a $275 billion deal with China in 2016 to prevent a crackdown by the communist government on its vast business in the country. However, Apple now faces mounting pressure from Donald Trump's tariffs on Chinese imports. The shift to India represents a significant acceleration of Apple's strategy to diversify its supply chain. Again, that's something they should have been working on beforehand. Why would you rely on someone like China like that for so long, for so much? You should have been had this in place, and you wouldn't have to try to rush and get and work with India. You should, like I said, they should have been had this in place because China has always been our adversary. The company has been planning to move some of its production away from China, but the tariffs have ramped up these plans. Apple's target is to have all of the iPhones sold in the US assembled in India by 2026. Currently, over 60 million iPhones are sold in America every year. This would effectively double Apple's current iPhone output in the country. Apple has been steadily increasing its manufacturing capacity in India in recent years. So they've been kind of preparing for it. But the company has been expanding partnerships with contract manufacturers like Tata Electronics and Foxconn, that's in China. However, the vast majority of iPhone assembly still takes place in China. Assembly assembly is the only final stage of iPhone production, however. Um, They still require hundreds of components sourced from suppliers, many of which are still based in China. In the rush to avoid higher tariffs following Trump's announcements, Apple briefly exported Indian-made iPhones to the US in a massive airlift. The US market accounts for roughly 28% of Apple's global iPhone shipments. Only 28. I thought it'd be more than that, to be honest. I'm not an iPhone user myself, um, but based on data from IDC, Apple shipped a total of 232.1 million units globally in 2024. To fulfill all US orders from India, Apple will need to significantly ramp up its production capabilities in the country. As part of the recent push, Foxconn and Tata have begun importing pre-assembled components sets from China to integrate its iPhones in their Indian facility. So I thought Foxconn was strictly China, but it sounds like Foxconn works in China and India. But analysts believe that the move is critical for Apple to sustain its growth trajectory. The iPhone maker is due to report quarterly earnings next week. Investors are trying to gauge the impact of Trump's tariff plans. CEO Tim Cook has engaged regularly with Trump and his administration since attending his inauguration in January 2025. So there you have it. Companies are making the move now. They're making a shift to India, which is something I think I talked about a couple of years ago. I was talking about this under the pandemic. I was talking about why do we rely on China, who again is our adversary for so many manufacturing things. For I mean, it comes from talking about military stuff to medication to trinkets. It all comes from China. And during the pandemic, we had a hard time getting stuff from China. I mean, look at what happened with the masks and stuff like that. And it's this is why we should not rely on our adversary. I really don't think we should rely on China. We need to try to bring as much manufacturing back to the United States as we can, especially pertaining to military stuff and necessities and medicine. We need to bring that manufacturing back to the United States, because what will happen if we have another global pandemic and shipping from other countries stop and things like that? So these are things we have to think about. But let me know what y'all think about this. Leave y'all comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest news. Until next time, peace.